Welcome back to My Seminary Life. I'm your host, Brandon Knight, and this is it, folks. We did it. We made it through our very first summer school series, talking about the topic of cults all throughout this week. It has been an interesting process doing it on my end. Let me know, did you like this format? We're going to go again here in July with Camp My Seminary Life, looking at the topic of hermeneutics there at the end of July for 5 days in a row. But let me know, what did you think? Did you like this? Did it make a difference? Was it too much on your feed having a brand new episode 5 days in a row? Let me know. Now that I'm done with school proper, now that I'm done with seminary proper and I can actually be creative, I didn't want to get creative when I was in school because I had to still get homework done. But now that I'm doing this on my own terms, it's like, I like experimenting with the format, experimenting with how the episodes come out. So you let me know. Did you like it? Do you want to keep it the way things were? Let me know. We are coming in for a landing here today, talking about another culturally relevant cult. So currently the attention is on 7M. At the beginning of this year, there was a lot of attention on a group known as Twin Flames Universe. But before we dive headfirst into the Twin Flames universe, I do want to take a moment to say thank you to everybody and anybody who took that next practical step and followed the Exposing 7M Instagram page or signing the petition to have Robert Shin investigated by the LA Police Department. I appreciate any of you who went ahead and took that extra step. And also shout out to Exposing 7M. I made that comment in the episode that they don't know who I am. They're not gonna, they didn't ask for this. They don't know who I am. They have 24,000 followers. They're not gonna notice me. And they did. So thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody, for commenting and following me back on Instagram. Appreciate that. It's good to be seen. It's nice to be seen every once in a while. And we are here with you. If you're listening to this episode, those of you who run that page, we are here with you to pray and to fight for justice. Now, let's talk Twin Flames universe. We have seen throughout this week a couple different styles, a couple different approaches, right? We had the UFO cult that was very much, standard cult stuff, but also all of this stuff about aliens. Then we had one of the longest running cults of all time with the Mormon Church. We talked about them this week. We had the very aggressive, very targeted World Mission Society Church of God. We had this very entrepreneur-focused 7M group. Today, we're going to see a group that the way that they're kind of flipping the script a little bit, that came up a lot yesterday as we were talking about 7M and Shekinah Church. The way that Twin Flames Universe has kind of flipped the script is, one, it is primarily, I talked about this yesterday, a online group. This has very little people are together. As of recent, it sounded like from some of the people who had come out of the group that there is plans in motion to start to bring everybody together into a compound set situation. There are some people who are currently living with the leaders of the group, but by and large, it is an online presence. You can find their YouTube channel. They have an exclusive Facebook group that has some 14,000 people who are a part of it. This is, Zoom meetings, the whole thing. This is primarily an online focused group, as opposed to 7M and probably some of these other cults who, we even brought up Profundity Yours during the UFO cult episode, that they have some online presence. They are, with 7M, they're leveraging TikTok for financial gain and to maintain a good image. But these people are primarily, Twin Flames Universe is primarily focused on internet size and internet following. The other way that this group is kind of flipping the script a little bit is, as opposed to the traditional the standard definition that we've been using throughout this week of a cult is a group, a new religious movement that has splintered off from a major religion. With Twin Flames Universe, it's more of a melting pot of New Age spiritualism and, some would say, hyper-conservative evangelical Christianity. It's hard to say what is the primary religion here, especially when you're dealing with New Age as its religious source, because when you get into New Age spiritualism, paganism, occultism, by the way, friendly reminder, whenever I use the word pagan, I do mean it in the sense of somebody who is a religious practicing pagan, not as I do not use that term as a religious slur, like how many Christians do. Oh, those pagans over there. I do not use the term, I try to use the term pagan correctly. So when it comes to New Age spiritualism, neo-paganism, occultism, classical witchcraft, however you want to look at it, there is, but there isn't like a standard doctrine that you should follow. Like with many religions, Christianity, specifically, because that's going to be the one that we're most familiar with, there's kind of like there's to some degree like a checklist, you could say, of qualifications to say you are a Christian. The biggest qualification being, of course, that do you believe in Jesus as your savior? That's like the big one, right? But there's a few other things that we could potentially put in on that list to like, these are the benchmarks of like, okay, yeah, you are actually like a following, practicing Christian. Some of those things might be, things that you can confess. Some of those things might be things that you do, right? With like all these different like neo-paganism, occultism, witchcraft, New Age spiritualism, there is, but there isn't defined doctrines. Like it is a lot of like, especially with neo-paganism and occultism now, it's very much like it's very postmodern. Like take what works for you. If you're really into, what is it, like crystals and tarot cards and kitchen magic, and take what works for you, plant magic, herbal stuff, alchemy, whatever. Like you take what works well for you, and that is your set of beliefs. Another thing is also that like certain terms kind of get tossed around that to my ears mean nothing. And this is coming from like a year of just personal studying of witchcraft and neo-paganism and occultism, because I find it interesting. I'm actually like a little jealous of the pagans, if I can be quite honest with you, because, I'm a little jealous of the pagans. I really am. I feel like they have permission. Their like religious structure, New Age spiritualism, the whole thing, they have permission to like go their own path, to believe what they want, and to kind of be fluctuating, and that's okay. Whereas in Christianity, especially depending on like the group that you might, the denomination or theological convictions that you hold, you might be in with a group that is like very rigid, like I was talking about here at the beginning of the week, why I'm kind of moving away from the Reformed theological tradition of just like this very black and white, it's either you do this or you're sinning kind of, or you believe this, or you're outside of orthodoxy and you're a heretic. Like, I envy the pagans in a way, because they have permission to kind of be a little bit fluctuating with things and to experiment. Whereas depending on the Christian variety that you're a part of, and this is kind of where I have found myself often, you don't really get that opportunity as much. And I think that's part of the reason, again, going back to what I was talking about here in the first episode, why existentialism and biblical mysticism has started to appeal to me more, of just kind of like a more awe, more wonder, more open-endedness, more relationship. And yeah, anyway, I'm like way off base. We haven't even gotten to the twin flames part. This is going to be a long, rambling episode. Here we go. So, in all of this, that is to say that Twin Flames universe, it's hard to say if they have if you can say that, I guess you could say New Age spiritualism is the primary religion that they pull from, with a splash of Christianity in there. We'll get to that part as we go through this further. But we need to address this name, right? What is Twin Flames universe? Because it sounds like a cinematic universe, right? So the concept of the twin flames is, this goes back to a novel, actually, from the 1860s, 1880s, something like that. Just a term that was used in this book. It was picked up by the I Am movement, which was the precursor to the start of the New Age spiritualism movement in the 1900s. And one of the followers of this, of the teachings of the I Am movement, later takes the concept that they used of the twin flames and puts it into their teachings in 1999. So we're like 100 years removed now from how this term was originally used in a novel. It's 1999 now. It's been like reused and recycled. We're on number 2 now. And now what it means when we talk about twin flames is it's similar to the concept of a soulmate. So we have, there's somebody out there who, like, your soul is yearning for, and, you might not necessarily have say in who that person is. Twin flames takes that concept a step further to say that this is like more than just like somebody you're super compatible with. This is like the missing piece for your divine journey. Like, you have to have this person in your life in order to grow to whatever the next stage is for you. And to not have this person in your life, and not to be a part of their life, because there's only one twin flame out there per person, to not have that person is detrimental to the both of you. So, for the record, just as we, again, this is going to be a wide-ranging conversation. Just for the record, I don't believe in any of that. Soulmates or twin flames for certain. And Claire's aware of that, and she would also agree. A moment ago, I told you about how we need more mysticism and awe and wonder in Christianity. Here's a place where I think we need to tone it down a notch. The will of God, okay? Because a lot of Christians, they kind of have this approach. I had this approach when I was single, that there is like one person out there that is a perfect match for you. There's like this one very specific person that God has for me, and I have to figure out who that person is. And you can copy and paste that mindset to God, the school that God wants me to go to, the job God wants me to have, the place that God wants me to live. And we turn the will of God into this big, like, mysterious, like, it's impossible really to know, and yet we have to to be on that path, or as one person has has very literally told me to my face about my life, that if I'm not on this path, God is going to make my life incredibly uncomfortable until I figure out what path I'm actually supposed to be on. Yeah, that was because I had stopped going to seminary because I couldn't afford it anymore, and they volunteered to pay for seminary. So this was actually pretty recent, because this is how I was able to go back to seminary and start this show. So we're talking like 3 years ago. I had this conversation with somebody who was like, God's going to make your life uncomfortable until you get on the right path he wants you to be on. Because I'm just, trying to make the right financial decision that is good for my family. I'm sure God does not understand that and is mad at me about it. Anyway, but we treat it that way, and I think it's because we take verses like Ephesians 2:10, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works that God predestined beforehand that we should walk in them. Or we take when Jesus says, enter by the narrow gate, and we take those like concepts of like the narrow gate, even though I think that's talking about salvation and following Jesus, but we take concepts like the narrow gate and the good works that we should walk in them. And we kind of get this idea of like, there's one very specific path that we're supposed to follow. However, I would argue that in some of these things, the very specific thing that you're supposed to do, that like very, it's not that God doesn't care, but I kind of feel like God doesn't care, if I'm being quite honest. Like, marriage is important, Paul talks about how marriage is a image of Jesus's love for his bride, the church. You're going to be listening to this episode while I'm at my brother-in-law's wedding. Marriage is important, and how we work at our jobs is important, and we do all these things to bring glory to God, right? But I think sometimes we really make this far more complicated and mysterious than it really needs to be. What is the will of God for your life? Make disciples. Live in light of the Sermon on the Mount. Take care of the poor and widowed. Take communion. I think if God is as infinite and as wise and knowledgeable as we so often say he is, then is it not possible that he knows all of the good works that we could be walking in? Not like one very specific narrow path, but all of the righteous things that we could be doing. Like, Claire and I have both, so don't feel like this is some like hot gossip that she doesn't know. Claire and I have both talked about how we love each other. It's hard for us to both picture life without each other, but we both acknowledge that it is possible that we could have ended up with someone else and still be living in light of, God and eternity. And, or if one of us, Lord forbid, passes away, that the other one could find another person and fall in love with them. It would be a different kind of love and relationship, but it would still be love, So all that to say, just for the record, I don't get behind the whole soulmates or twin flames thing. And I think, ironically, as much as I think we need more awe and wonder and mystery in Christianity, it would probably be good if we toned it down when it comes to the will of God. I really don't think it's that complicated. But I'm 30 years old. What do I know? Anyway, back to the twin flames universe. So, this is what the concept of the twin flames is, okay? So essentially, as I teased in yesterday's episode, Focus on the Family has called Twin Flames Universe a prosperity gospel new age movement. In taking it even more specifically, this is a dating cult. This is a cult to help you prepare yourself for your perfect match, the one perfect match in the universe. And it's not all dating. Some of it is just like people's relationships with other people, but by and large, it is coaching to help people find love That's what we're dealing with here. So this is a very unique, again, we have another unique twist in all of this. We've had some unique twists. We had the UFO cult here at the beginning. We had the whole TikTok thing yesterday. Today we're dealing with a dating service cult. Twin Flames universe was started by Jeff and Celia. Celia? Is that how you say her name? Celia Devine, who are, of course, twin flames themselves. Both of them have had an interesting journey. Jeff was originally from Michigan. At one point after graduating college, he moved out to California and then Hawaii, changed his name to Ender Aentheos. I probably butchered that. And yes, Ender is a reference to Ender's Game, just for the record. And kind of started like a little bit of like a coaching, vlogging, professionalism style like thing. Whatever you're picturing is about right. Shalia, whose name at first was Megan. They both have changed their names. Jeff's name, he's born as Jeff Ayan. But originally Megan Planty, who changed her name to Shalia Devine. She was like a waitress, but also really into like she's a psychic, self-professed psychic, relics. I think she did relics too, and something else. Relic practitioner, psychic, photography student, and worked at a restaurant. So she was already like really into the spiritualism side of things. Anyway, they came together online and eventually got together, got married, tried a couple different like vlogging, coaching style things, and eventually landed with Twin Flames Universe, where they're doing coaching, selling classes, Zoom calls, the whole 9 yards, everything that they tell us podcasters to do to make a buck. They're doing all of these things, hoping to lead people to their twin flame, right? And a lot of the people who come into the group usually have like a suspect for who they think their twin flame is. And sometimes it's as simple as like, oh, it's a childhood friend or their ex. And sometimes, you know, some of the testimonies are like, it's a regular customer who comes into my restaurant who I don't even know their name. Like it's a wide variety of kinds of people. But because of this concept of the twin flame is like, this is the one person in all of existence that you are supposed to be with, and it's detrimental to both of y'all's spiritual growth. That means they teach that you are supposed to do whatever you can to try and get together with that person. They have confirmed with God, which is how you get a little bit of the splash of Christianity in here, that is your twin flame. You need to do whatever you can to get with that person. And so, some of you might be ahead of me, this has resulted in many of these people being charged with stalking, getting restraining orders filed against them. Ryan Gosling had to file a restraining order against a fan who was claiming that he was their twin flame. It's legally messy. It turns into this legal mess. Well, can't you then, person who is in this cult, turn to Jeff and Shalia and say, hey, your advice sucks. Now I have a stalking charge. Now I have a restraining order. What am I supposed to do here? You told me to do this. I have these issues now. Also, my twin flame still will not talk to me. Well, two things. One, as many cults do, there was a pivot. There's always a pivot. And the pivot here was that they stopped telling people to look outward towards their twin flame and started turning people inward. Part of the reason why it sounds like they're trying to get more people like together in person. obviously also for control purposes, but to make it inward dating. It's matchmaking now. They're setting people up who are in the group with each other rather than trying to send them outward. Again, because God told them to. But the other thing that they practice to deflect any problems off of themselves is what is known as the mirror exercise. And the mirror exercise is, again, kind of comes from this spiritualism practices. It is not a healthy practice, and it's in a way, it's almost like you're gaslighting yourself, because basically how the process works is that whatever negative situation is going on, you're supposed to replace all the outward pronouns with personal pronouns. So instead of saying, she doesn't love me, I would say, I don't love me. And you just kind of like repeat these kind of like phrases about all your negative situations, but you turn it on yourself. So it's the ultimate get out of jail free card if you're a cult leader, because it's like you cannot take any responsibility at this point. It's because these people aren't doing the work. They're there's more they could be doing. And here's the proof: do the mirror exercise. Because if you do the mirror exercise, you'll realize you are the problem. And this actually, this brings me to another, weird Christian soapboxy thing that I kind of get on every once in a while. I think it's important for us to acknowledge the fact that even as a disciple of Jesus, we still sin. Right. And it's good for us to reflect on where we have come from as a way to push us to glorify Jesus for what he has done for us. Right. But I think a lot of us define ourselves by our past or present sin rather than moving forward in the light of Jesus. We are to consider ourselves dead to sin and also alive to Jesus. That's Romans 6:11, Romans 6:12, somewhere in there. And what's cool about that and that Paul uses there is that it's very specifically the Greek word, I think it's ayah, which is I was bad at Greek, sorry about pronunciation, which is it's not but or just and, because that's kai, but this is and also. These things are supposed to go together. We are to consider ourselves dead to sin in light of the freedom that we have in Jesus. We are to consider ourselves dead to sin and also alive to God. And I think a lot of us can consider ourselves dead to sin, but we don't consider ourselves alive and also alive to God. We either in our actions or in our mentality about how we think about ourselves, we are still just, wretches, right? And it's no, stop doing the mirror exercise. You're not just a wretch, or maybe not even calling yourself a wretch still is appropriate. You are a child of God. You are his child. The game has changed. You are alive now. You are free. You are not a slave to sin anymore. So stop submitting yourself to slavery to sin, which I think is in part how we think about ourselves. So yeah, stop doing the mirror exercise as a Christian too, and live in light of your, aliveness. That's a word, right? Anyway, so getting back to Twin Flames universe, as I keep going off of random rabbit trails, we'll see how long this goes. Sorry, Mom. We're already at the 30-minute mark. So when it comes to the Twin Flame universe, so we have this we're setting you people up now with each other rather than pushing you outwards. Okay, the mirror exercise is still a toxic practice. And again, it deflects any kind of guilt or like accountability off of the leader. And also just this whole idea of there's only one person in all of existence that you're supposed to be with is kind of a stretch. But the thing that actually really got attention is what they started teaching when they made this pivot to this matchmaking within the group. Because they started teaching the divine masculine and the divine feminine concepts. So in the divine masculine and divine feminine, this idea is that everybody either is a divine masculine or a divine feminine. And they are to live out that gender identity in their life. And so, as they are doing their matchmaking, they not only start setting up people of the same gender who are not attracted to each other, but God told them to set them up as a couple. They are also now assigning their divine gender to these people as well, to people who, again, have never had any kind of transgender like desires, but they are now saying, woman, you are the divine woman who was assigned the gender and has always identified as the female gender. God told us that you are actually the divine masculine, and so you have to cut your hair, change your name to a man name, change your pronouns, start acting more masculine. It's like reverse conversion therapy. So conversion therapy was especially popular in like the 80s and 90s, kind of went along a little bit with the whole purity culture movement of Christians trying to change people who were part of the LGBTQ plus community or trans or whatever to sorry, I shouldn't say whatever. I'm not trying to be flippant. Trying to have them live in light of their birthed gender by doing extremely stereotypical gendered things. So like if you're a guy, you're going to go play football with the guys. If you're a girl, you're going to, learn how to braid hair and wear dresses and things like that. And it's by doing these things that you're going to become heterosexual and not question your gender, even though like that's like all very surface level. If we're going to look at this through the lens of counseling, that's just dealing with surface level symptoms rather than trying to get at the core. I'm not going to go any further than that because that's a whole other rabbit trail that we don't need to go down. But essentially they're doing like a reverse form of conversion therapy where in order to make their matchmaking work, they are putting genders, they're gendering people in ways that they have never identified before and expecting them to live it out. Oh, you don't want to? Well, do the mirror exercise and figure out why you don't want to do it. Because it's your problem. You're the problem here. It's a vicious cycle. And obviously this whole like assigning genders and also conversion therapy style forcing stereotypical gender norms upon somebody is not cool. Like I'm not going to get behind that. I saw one gender researcher said that this would be like if a progressive liberal got drunk and hooked up with a hyper-conservative evangelical and they birthed a child that was this teaching. This teaching is the child of that like intercourse because it's so both progressive and also so conservative all at the same time. It actually kind of hurts my head a little bit. Like seriously, trying to explain all of that was like, I hope you kept up with it. If not, rewind to about whatever that was, like 5 minutes ago, and listen to it again. They started doing matchmaking. They're assigning gender roles, stereotypical gender identities and gender roles to people, even though they have never seen it that way. they've never identified as transgender that way, or that they were attracted to someone of the same gender. This is what they are making people do now. And that's not cool. That is not cool. And you want to go the homosexuality as a sin route, then yeah, it's like forced sin at that point. But also it's just not cool to like force stereotypical gendered things on people, whether they're that gender or not. This is coming from a guy who has been forced to have, this is coming from a guy who has had stereotypical masculine things forced on him before. Like, it's just, don't do that. That's not tasteful to do to a person. And some people pushed back, and that was the way that they were able to eventually exit. Other people who were really bought in went along with it. Some even went as far as to get gender affirming surgery to like go along with what they were saying. And that's big. Those are big changes to make in your life, all in the name of love, but also kind of like your eternal spiritual progression at the same time. Like, I guess if this is ultimately tied to like your spiritual progression, like, I guess it's not insane to think that somebody would get that kind of surgery or do even like hormonal therapy. If your eternal sanctification depended upon you living out stereotypical gender roles to the point where you have to mutilate yourself, I shouldn't use the word mutilate, but physically change yourself in ways permanently in order to do that. Like, I'm sure other Christians have done crazy things like that before. Again, I've had stereotypical masculine identity things shoved down my throat throughout my life. I have had to unpack so many things, and I know I'm not the only person who has had to do that. And it's damaging. And it's damaging to the person, and it's hard to unpack it. So, in time, this group is still active. A lot of the media coverage started in 2020. I think it was actually like outside of the like small blogosphere that was keeping up with it. I think it was Vanity Fair, of all people, who brought Twin Flames universe to the pop culture spotlight. And since then, Prime and Netflix have both released documentaries. Like I said, they came out like late 2023, early 2024. They were almost back to back, and they are both worth watching because you do get like the same people in the documentaries, but both of them come at the topic from different angles. The one that came a little bit later, which I think was Netflix's, it has a little bit more of a story, like a little bit more to the story, because they had, it came out later, so there was more progress that was made. But I think this is a good point to sit down and wrestle with a question that does come up a lot in cults, and we have gotten to our last day of our series, and we're just now going to wrestle with this question. Because one thing that people have wrestled with is, when people start a cult, what are their motives? When people start a new religious movement, because I don't know if anybody necessarily goes into it thinking they're going to start a cult. Maybe the guy who started the Sarah Lawrence cult, I think that was his agenda. But I don't think people necessarily go into it thinking, I'm going to start a cult. Starting a new religious movement, sure. Starting a new denomination, sure. That happens. Planting a church, sure. That happens. The question is, what are your intentions by doing this? Do people set out to start these things with good intentions? Do they truly believe that they have gotten divine intervention? Do they really believe that they have gotten new revelation from God, that they are truly aliens from another planet, or the last witnesses in the book of Revelation, or whatever, do they truly believe that? Or is it like the man who, I can't think of his name right now, who started the Nawabians, who he was a con man throughout his life, and he started a cult that was lucrative, gave him a lot of power, and allowed him to abuse the power. Because so many of these, they have skeletons in the closet. And like Claire said in yesterday's episode, Christianity has plenty of dark skeletons in their closet too. Like we're not blameless in this. But so many of these have stories of abuse, of tragically, mass suicides, shootouts with the government. Like, so many of these have violent endings, or abuse, or mismanagement of money, or all of the above. It's like, was that the goal the whole time? Was just to abuse power for your own personal gain? Like, again, some of these you might be able to point to and say, yeah, that's probably what the plan was from the get-go. I think I'm pretty confident in saying that Keith Raniere from NXIVM, he was just a power-hungry guy who was leveraging systems to his advantage. But I don't think we can say that every person who has started a cult has done it for malicious purposes. I don't think L. Ron Hubbard started Scientology with malicious intentions. It has done plenty of damage since it got started, but I think he was legitimately trying to put forward a new form of mental health counseling, pseudopsychology that is quite damaging, but I think he was legitimately trying to do something for the good. And this gets into a whole ethical, moral conversation of like, is it really a good deed if it then turns into all of these, decades of abuse and mismanagement of money and whatnot? Probably not. But when it comes to Jeff and Shalia, it's kind of both. Because like I said, and people who have known Jeff and Shalia since they were younger, like old friends, have said that Shalia is the one who is the spiritual leader, if we're going to use, Christian terms that we're familiar with. When they met, remember, she's like a psychic and into relic and all, relic, who are all like really already into the New Age spiritualism stuff. People who have known Jeff for most of their lives would say that from a very young age, Jeff was a showman who wanted to be rich and didn't want to have to work hard for it. He was an entrepreneur from the get-go. And so I really do think that in this situation, you have an example of both. That Shalia, who knows where she's at now, right? In all of this, like, I'll just use the Christian-y, like, God knows their hearts, right? But I really think that from the get-go, and maybe even still to this day, Shalia went into this, like, thinking she's doing something good. Jeff is a businessman, and Jeff is doing what he needs to do to make money, and in all forms of passive income, which is every content creator's dream, to have several streams of passive income and be able to live off of that. And I'm like kind of grossed out by it, that like here I am doing the thing that like Jeff is doing and making a ton of money off of and damaging people as a result. And it's also the same advice they give me, and I don't like it. So yeah, so that is the Twin Flames universe. Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. That should be the new My Seminary Life send-off. And now you know, and knowing is half the battle. Thanks, G.I. Joe. But let's talk about the question one last time. The question that we have gone round and round 5 times now. What are the odds? What are the odds that you could run into somebody from the Twin Flames universe? So here's my take. You can go on their website or their YouTube channel or try to join their private Facebook group. It is there. It's not hard. The thing is, though, again, because we're dealing with a different model here for this cult, this is kind of different from like Mormons, or especially like the World Mission Society, Church of God, or Jehovah's Witnesses, where they will come to you. You have to go seek this out. I don't know if you're really gonna get recruited that much. I think you have to go search this out. So if you're single or a young person, like, and you're curious about how to find your twin flame, like, you have to go search this stuff out. It is there, so you could run into it, but it's, again, flipping the script a little bit here. I don't think they're like passionately trying to get people to join their group. Obviously they want to make money, and they'll do targeted ads and all the other things, right? But I think this is a little bit different, where you might have to go seek this out, because again, it's a business with classes and courses and Zoom Q&As and meetings and conference calls and all the terms that all mean the same thing that every content creator knows. So yeah, I think it's a little bit different with this one. The concept of the twin flame you might run into, because this is again kind of a popular. They do not own the concept of the twin flame. Okay, this is a general New Age spiritualism concept, so you could run into it that way through other means, but Twin Flames universe is its own thing, if that makes sense. Hopefully any of this almost 50-minute episode made sense. Well, congratulations, folks. You may now officially pat yourself on the back. You made it through summer school. And again, let me know. Email seminarylife@gmail.com. Did you enjoy this format? Do you not care? Would you like to see this style more often? Let me know. But thank you all for listening. If you haven't yet already, please rate and review the show wherever you get your podcasts, and pass this along to a friend who you think would benefit from learning about how we definitely overcomplicate the will of God at times. If you would like to financially support the show, you can always buy merch, or you can head on over to buymeacoffee.com/MSLpod. You can leave a one-time donation, or you can join one of our monthly support tiers. Everyone who supports the show at the $9 a month tier gets a shout out. So thank you, Lori, for supporting the show. We're back on a break starting tomorrow. No new episodes for a few weeks, but like I said, we will be back late July. I think it is the 22nd through the 26th for Camp My Seminary Life, where we're going to be talking about the topic of hermeneutics. We're making a hard left. We've been doing basically some form of apologetics, world religion studies for 3 months now. We're going to go the complete opposite direction now and talk about how to study the Bible in a way. That's what, at a very simple understanding, that is what hermeneutics is, but there's more to it than that. So come back late July. But until then, this is Brandon signing off, reminding you as always that knowing is half the battle, that theology is for everyone, so keep on studying.